What up, homies? It's Season 10, Episode 34 of the Ubuntu podcast. In this episode, we're going to discuss Ubuntu 17.10, the artful aardvark. We'll also have some command line lurve, and go over your feedback. I'm Alan, your main man, and joining me this week are Mark.
Word to your person.
And Martin.
I can't even.
So, greetings and salutations, everyone. Mark,
Hello.
what have you been up to?
I have been battling balloon fighting robots.
Wow. Is this a computer game?
No, this is IRL.
Oh.
Ooh.
So I've mentioned before that I volunteer at a weekend club for teaching kids to code and stuff. And we have been playing with these robot buggies, which are controlled with BBC microbits. And this week's activity was programming 2 microbits. They've got a radio module in, which allows you to send wireless commands between them.
Wait, what? The microbit has?
Yep.
Huh.
Yep. And a nice Python API for using it. So we programmed one to be the receiver and plugged that into the buggy. So it also controlled the motors on the buggy. And then we used the other one with some buttons and some more with the buttons on the board and some more buttons on a breadboard, and made a little 4-way controller, which then sent the commands via radio. And then we gaffer taped a carpenter's awl onto the front, which is basically a mounted spike, and set up an arena with some balloons on. And then there was a competition to see who could pop the most balloons in 30 seconds.
Epic.
It was great fun.
I bet it was. And if that's not going to get kids interested in computers, I can't imagine what would.
So how do you? So the individuals were controlling the bots, like up, down, left, right, like with the button, homemade button controller, right?
Yes. So we either got them to do
direct control.
Yeah, where either they did it like that or they used the accelerometer in the board, so they were just tilting it to control it.
So there was no AI involved. It was all human beings.
This was push forward. It goes forward until you stop pushing forward. Push left. It turns left until you stop pushing left. Wow. That sort of thing. Yes.
Do you think level 2 will make it so that it does that without you pressing buttons, or are they not that level yet?
Well, a few weeks ago we did do it where they attached an arm with a switch on, so that if it drove into a wall, it backed off and then turned around. And there was a few of them where we had them in a little 3-walled thing, and it managed to find its own way out. That was quite cool. So you could probably combine the two so that you had an automated balloon popper.
Nice.
Yes, it was interesting to see how difficult it became once they popped a couple of the balloons to get the last few done. And we had a Mario Kart style battle at the end where we got them to tie balloons onto their robots and try and pop each other's, which was good fun to watch.
Wow. What sort of duration do you spend, like, on a weekend? You know, is this like a whole day session to do this? We run it in 3 sessions, an hour and a half each. So we do 2 sessions, morning and after lunch for, I think it's probably 9 to 11-year-olds. And then we do another session in the afternoon for 12 to 15-year-olds.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah. Sounds like fun.
It's very good fun.
Right. Should we get on with it?
Let's. And now, since our last show, we will have seen that Ubuntu Artful Aardvark, that's 17.10, has been released. Although, as we record this, it hasn't quite been released. So we've been playing with the beta version, and we're going to share some of our thoughts.
Yes.
So, first up, 17.10, as most of you will know by now, is the first release which doesn't have Unity as the desktop, since Unity became the default desktop back in the dim and distant past. So we now have a GNOME 3 based desktop. So how's it looking?
Well, to clarify, Unity came in, 7 years ago? 10.10 was the first release where it was default. So that's like 7 years of Unity, and now suddenly it's GNOME Shell. And they've had the team who've been working on this have had since about April this year when it was announced that's what we were going to do to get this done. I think they've done an amazing job the one cycle they've had to completely throw out the desktop we've been running for 7 years and put in GNOME Shell tailored for an Ubuntu audience. I think they've done amazing work to get that done.
Yep. It has been a fast turnaround, and, you know, at first glance, you wouldn't necessarily know that it's changed that much under the hood. I'd say, in terms of, you know, you look at the desktop, you've got things where you'd expect them to be. It's still got, you know, the apps you'd expect to have. The keys do more or less what they did before.
Yeah, there are some notable changes, like the big friendly button that used to be in the top left, where you used to open the dash in Unity, is now an applications button in the bottom left hand corner. And I've seen some people complain about that for a number of reasons, like the fact that it's moved is one thing, but you know, I'm sure some people click it. I'm sure some people press the super key in order to launch that, and that hasn't, like, the Windows key hasn't moved. That's still in the same place on your keyboard. but I know some people have noted that actually now with GNOME Shell and that extension that provides that launcher on the left-hand side, it's actually got an option to move it, which Unity didn't have until very late in its life, the ability to move that. And it has the ability to move it to the bottom and to the right-hand side of the screen. But when you move it to the bottom, the applications button is on the right-hand side. So, you know, like, it basically takes the launcher that's along the left-hand side and turns it through 90 degrees, puts it at the bottom. You end up with an application button in the bottom right-hand corner. I think that's something possibly overlooked, you know, at some point, but that's kind of why we're doing this in 17.10 and not just throwing this out in the LTS that's got to be supported for 5 years. It makes total sense to iron these things out in this pre-LTS release. Yeah.
I'll tell you another thing I noticed about the launcher is that you can have it dodge Windows, which was taken away in Unity.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So I'm very happy to see that back. I hope it doesn't go.
There was a few people who were really angry about the fact that we removed, it was called IntelliHide. We removed IntelliHide years ago, and people were quite grumpy about that. And there were even people who made PPAs that had it patched back in again. And it was a design decision at the time, and you know, it was design led, so not a lot we could do about that. But that's all in the past. But now that it's back, those people who, you know, were grumpy that it went away, hopefully will be pleased that it's come back.
So on that point, Mark, you've obviously you've used other desktops. You used Unity and settled on that and were quite happy with it. How have you found that transition from Unity to the GNOME 3 based Ubuntu desktop experience?
I should probably say I haven't really transitioned. I've played with it to get my head around what's going on with it. So I've not actually sat and worked with it for any significant amount of time. But I've spotted a few things that I like and a few things I don't like.
What do you like? Alternate between like and dislike.
Okay, so I like the familiar layout. I don't like the all-in-one kind of indicator thing in the top right. That's a bit weird. You don't have individual indicators. You have 3 icons and then you click on them and you get a big menu with all sorts of stuff in. Not so keen on that. As I mentioned, I like the launcher's got whatever we call it, IntelliHide. I think it's called something like Smart.
Is that an on by default option, by the way?
No, that was I turned that on. I don't think that was on by default. That was in the options.
It's just a supported option. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like the whole thing where it puts buttons in the title bar of the window.
Okay.
Like the problem with that I find is I don't know, because you if you've got a form, you've got some controls in the window and you've got some controls in the title bar, and there doesn't really seem to be any particular expectation as to when it will put stuff in the top and which things it will put in the top. So you just find yourself sort of, you know, I sat there for a while working out where an apply button was in a settings dialog, and then for some reason it was in the top of the window.
Yeah. So a few of those, like, interestingly, that you mentioned the notification thing where you don't like the fact that there's only one big panel that pops out when you press in the top right-hand area of the screen. Yeah. I actually prefer that because I find on Unity, some of those things are hard targets to hit. Like, to hit the sound thing, you have to go in between the battery one and the clock one, for example, or to hit the network one, you got to go in between the Bluetooth one and the messaging one or whatever. Whereas on GNOME Shell, I quite like that I just throw my mouse into that area, hit vaguely somewhere there, and a thing pops out. It does mean that there's more clicks to get to your target. Yeah. So, like, for example, connecting to a wireless network you've never been on before is a surprisingly high number of clicks from an empty desktop. Whereas it's fewer on the traditional indicators where you just click the indicator, click the network and type your password, press enter and you're done. With GNOME Shell, you click and then click to expand and then click connect and then a box pops up and then you click the network, then you press a button, then you type your password, then you press a button. That feels like an extremely longer way to get to connect to a network. But it's one of those things you don't necessarily do very often. If that was how to shut down your computer was 6 clicks, I'd be more annoyed about it than I really am. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But the thing that I find interesting is that you mentioned the thing on the right. I'm more annoyed about the fact that the clock's in the middle.
Oh, that does annoy me as well.
Oh, okay, good.
I haven't finished my list.
Oh, sorry. I thought you breathed, so I jumped in. But the clock being in the middle and notifications for applications being in the middle is jarring. But I agree with you about the buttons in the toolbar, but I think that's one of those things, having used Unity for 7 years, it's one of those things that I'm just ingrained. I'm pretty sure I'd get used to it. But right now, I'm finding it really jarring that my eyes naturally go down to the bottom of a thing when I'm filling it in, and I expect there to be a button at the bottom to apply or save or dismiss. But actually, I have to move my eyes back up to the title of the window in order to dismiss or apply or close. Yeah. And that is a bit jarring. And I think that's an upstream decision. That's, there's nothing we can do about that. But, and this is like for many,
there's nothing you're going to do about that.
Well, we're shipping GNOME. We're not shipping like GNOME with 1,000 patches that move all the buttons around and make it break every time there's an update. That would be foolhardy, right? But
okay.
It's one of those things where, if you've been using GNOME Shell for the last 7 years that I've been using Unity, it's probably not a problem. But for those of us who are doing that leap, this is like, a lot of people have complained that, or some people on the internet have complained that we're shipping Ubuntu 17.10 with GNOME Shell that's been tweaked, and for good reason. Because there are people like me who've been using Unity for 7 years, come to this and are like, whoa, who moved my cheese? And everything's in a different place and it's all really alarming. It may be smoother, when we come to 1804 and some of these things can be fixed. I don't know.
Mm. So what else have you got on your list, Mark?
Another thing I liked are, I think we touched on it earlier, the main keyboard shortcuts. A lot of them do the same sort of thing. So if you tap the super key and then start typing, it will search for applications to launch. Or it'll search. Actually, I'm not sure. It's slightly different if you press super and A, and if you just press super, and I wasn't quite sure what super was doing differently. But either way, you can just hit it and start typing, and you can launch stuff. I liked that. I don't think there's a HUD anymore, is there? No, I don't like that. I like the HUD a lot. That's what got me using Unity.
Yeah, I love the HUD. I miss that sorely.
Yeah.
Do either of you miss the global menus?
Yes.
I miss menus in general.
Yes. In fact, combined with if you have a window title which has these buttons in, then you get a fat window title. And if you've got the window maximized and the panel not auto hiding, then you've got the panel at the top and then a fat title bar which has quite a lot of empty space in it, which could be used
for windicators. That's what you need, windicators.
It all feels quite boxed in,
right?
Which I feel like Unity made better use of space in that regard.
I think I agree with you that Unity made really, really good use of space. Like the fact that maximized applications you got an awful lot more screen real estate available to you. That's what it feels like, but technically it's only a few extra pixels vertically that you got, right? I feel for you when you say fat title bar, because it feels really big and fat and chunky, and it looks like it takes up loads and loads of space. But if you actually calculate it, it's a few extra pixels, and it's not actually that much. But because it's so high and wide, it looks bigger than it really is, I think. Because you've got this wide expanse of open space in the middle between the buttons.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like, oh my God, there's a giant space there. I could fit a game of Tetris in there or something. You know, or Defender or, you know, something wide I could fit in that space. It's bizarre. I think that is somewhat perception. And again, something you get used to, I guess. I don't know. It's early days for me. I feel like a gnome virgin, like, you know, trying out these things and feeling like, you know, anything I complain about, actually everyone else complained about 5 years ago. And, you know, it's second nature now. Maybe not.
I think time will tell.
Yeah.
I might. One other thing I do want to do, is give Ubuntu a go, and see how I get on with that these days.
How long is it since you last used Ubuntu in anger?
I think I switched to Unity for 12.04.
Wow, so quite a lot of change there as well then.
Yeah.
So it's not the KDE you left behind.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, that'll be interesting. So if you do that, that'll be an interesting thing to hear about your experiences on that as well.
Yeah.
So one of the other new things in 17.10 is the fact that it ships with Wayland by default. Did you notice this?
No.
That's good then.
Yes.
So interestingly, the live session uses X, not Wayland.
Oh, okay. I was running the live session.
Right. So you didn't notice because you weren't using Wayland.
What would I have noticed, though?
Well, that's a good question.
Hopefully not a lot.
In theory, not much, because once you install and you log in, the default is Wayland. There are circumstances where the default won't be Wayland. Like if you happen to have, I think if you install the binary NVIDIA drivers, I don't think you get Wayland by default. I think it knows that won't work. So it switches you to X, like you get fallback, and it just logs you into an X session. You can override it on the logon screen. You can say, no, I want Ubuntu on Xorg instead of stock Ubuntu, which is Wayland. And I've noticed a few like graphical glitches under Wayland on Intel, but not like significantly, oh crikey, this doesn't work and it explodes in 50 colors. It just seems to work okay. If you say, you know, put Steam on there and install an OpenGL game, does that all go fine under Wayland, or does it do some X on Wayland thing, or does it just blow up? So, for example, Firefox doesn't work under Wayland. It uses X Wayland.
Right, but is that all fairly seamless?
You wouldn't know, really.
Okay,
like, brilliant. If you log into a Wayland session and you open Firefox, other than, like I said, on my machine, I get graphical glitches, and I need to file a bug about that. But on, like in theory, you just open Firefox and just use it, and it doesn't.
Right.
The thing I did notice is rendering issues around the edge of the window and a bit of flickering.
Right.
But nothing like, you know, it doesn't work. I didn't get any applications. There were earlier in the development cycle, the PDF viewer events just didn't load. Like you'd click it and no window would appear. But that was earlier in the development cycle and that's been fixed. So, yeah, we've uncovered those kind of bugs. It may well be that there are applications in the archive and third-party applications that people install that don't work. And we certainly need to iron out those issues before 1804. So I'm super keen for people to try out 1710, because if you don't and 1804 rolls around and your stuff doesn't work, and we didn't know about it, then there's not a lot we can do. So it's important that people do try it out.
Yeah. Now, we've spoken a lot there about sort of the look and feel and the new user interface, and we've really only scratched the surface because this is sort of a wholesale changeover. But there's also been a number of changes under the hood as well, sort of the unseen stuff that are improving things. So it doesn't sound like, Mark, you've done much with peripherals and things. So
no, not yet.
Alan, are you aware of any of the under the hood changes, and have you seen the benefit of any of those changes?
So apparently we have, one of the things I definitely have seen the benefit of is we now have the newer network manager, which allows you to log into captive portals more easily.
Oh, right.
So if you're in like a coffee shop or a hotel, when you use network manager and you click on the network and once you're connected, if the network manager detects that you're on a captive portal, where you have to sign in with your hotel room or the coffee shop has a code or something, you'll get a browser pop up rather than you having to go and load the browser and open a page and then, get redirected and all that. It actually pops up a browser window. It's not a browser. It's like a WebGTK thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And that allows you to sign in. That goes away and you're on captive portal because the little network manager icon has a question mark in it. So you've got a good indication that your network is in a dodgy state, like you're on a hotel Wi-Fi. It works really well. That and the other one was Bluetooth. Apparently is much better. But I threw away all my Bluetooth devices because they all suck. So
they work now.
Well, I'll have to go and dig them out the recycle bin.
So, and the other big change under the hood is there's a fully accelerated video decoding pipeline. If you're watching video, that's all hardware accelerated now.
Ooh.
Right,
okay,
so I
think know what that means.
Well, it means that if you're watching Netflix or playing back videos in the video players, it uses the video decoding capabilities on your CPU, GPU, whatever, rather than doing it all in the CPU. So it's more power efficient.
Oh, I didn't realise it didn't do that before.
Yeah, no, it didn't.
Well, you can do that, but you generally have to go and download some like strange codecs and libraries and stuff and fiddle with things to make it work. And now it's just out the box.
Oh, right.
You get that kind of stuff. Like you'd have to go and get VDPAU, libVDPAU and other nonsense to make that work. But it works out the box. They've done a lot of good work on that to make it
awesome.
Much better.
So I think all that remains is for us to say to our listeners, what did you think of Ubuntu 10? What have your experiences been like? How did you find the transition?
Yeah, and I'm sure Laura will be giving you some information on how to tell us what you thought.
If you love the command line as much as we do, send us a command that will blow our minds, and we might even mention it on the show. Send your command line lurve to show@ubuntupodcast.org.
Okay, I've got a command line love for you, and some of you may already know this, but it was new to me, and I discovered this thing when we were debugging a problem with applications launching on NVIDIA hardware. And I set up a machine with an NVIDIA card so one of my colleagues could SSH into it from his location so he could get first-hand experience of the bug and SSH in and like look at the logs and debug the problem. And it was a clean install, and I didn't install the binary NVIDIA drivers. I just did a clean install of Ubuntu, gave him the SSH credentials and said, there you go. He SSH'd in and did all his stuff and debugged the issue, fixed the issue. So I'm grateful for that. And then after he logged out, I typed history to see what he'd done on this machine that was on my network. I trust my coworkers.
Sneaky.
I assume he didn't put a keylogger in or port scan my network. No, he didn't. But I just wanted to see what he'd done because I know he didn't have a graphical log on to the system. He wasn't using VNC or anything. He was just SSH'd in. And I thought, how did he install the NVIDIA drivers? And it turns out he used a command called Ubuntu-drivers. And I had no idea this thing existed. And it's been in Ubuntu for a long time. And the goal of this thing is to list additional third-party, like proprietary drivers that you could install and install them. And so I looked in the history and all he'd done is Ubuntu-drivers space auto install and pressed enter. And that was it. That's all he'd done. And it installed the NVIDIA binary driver. Now, normally on a graphical desktop, you go to the drivers thing and you press a button and you tell it you want the NVIDIA driver and you tell it which version and you tell it like go and it does it. But this I thought was just a nice, clean way to get the binary NVIDIA driver on your system or other drivers for other components as well on your system using the command line. It's brilliant.
Did this used to be called Jockey at one point?
Possibly. Jockey GTK is certainly the graphical thing that existed for a while, and it could be that Jockey was the command line. It could be a succession of Jockey and Jockey GTK. But I know that the Jockey GTK thing is now merged into the software sources thing. So I don't think Jockey GTK exists anymore.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. So that could be where this came from originally. But I thought it was great. Ubuntu drivers lists the things you could install. Ubuntu drivers devices shows the devices that could have new drivers installed.
And the packages that are associated with them.
Right. Yeah. It tells you what packages need to be installed. So you could go and do that manually yourself, or, like a barbarian, or you could Ubuntu drivers auto install and let the magic pixies do the install for you. It's brilliant.
Winner.
Great.
We love getting your feedback. If you've got a comment about something you hear on the show, why don't you drop us an email on show@ubuntupodcast.org.
And here it is, all of your fantastic feedback. And first this week we have Oividu Serban, who emailed us at show@ubuntupodcast.org.
I decided to write you an email regarding your comments on open source in academia, but because it was too long, I did a blog post instead. The whole thing is published as an open letter in the spirit of open source, and we will put a link to that blog post in our show notes.
Andrew Keach posted a comment on our Google Plus page.
Thanks for the quick rundown of the rally. Would have enjoyed more anecdotes. By the way, what's everyone's storage situation like? Would love to have a rundown of the group's solutions with contemporary technologies and why they choose them.
Well, I've got a loft, a garage, I've got several cupboards.
I use those plastic boxes. I go to
I have
the shop.
I have several,
and they
plastic
stack
boxes.
really well. They're really good.
Well. Yeah, I've got 4 of those and some little plastic pull-out trays.
Should we stop being silly and really answer his question?
I don't know. What do you? It's actually a short question with a massive answer from my end.
Well, I can give a short answer for what I do. I have 2 NUCs, and connected to the NUCs are some hard disk caddies connected over USB 3, and I use Open Media Vault as the NAS OS that runs on the NUC to then open up that storage so I can do stuff with it, like run Plex and NFS servers and all of that sort of stuff.
I have laptops mostly with SSDs inside them, and they all back up to a central server, which is sat on the floor next to me. And that has like multi-terabyte ZFS, I think, these days. And I also have a Netgear Ready NAS, which uses ButterFS, which is nice because that just works. And that I use to store media like downloaded radio programs and stuff like that from Radio 4 and ebooks and stuff like that, so I can listen to them from anywhere.
I too have a Ready NAS, which is connected to my HP microserver, and that's running Nextcloud, and then I basically sync stuff onto that from my laptop, and I've got MB running on the microserver for streaming the media to other places. And yeah, that's about it.
Nice.
Yep. Real Deacus posted an essay on our Reddit/r Ubuntu podcast.
The government, previous incarnations of it, have been very forward-thinking regarding information technology. As a kid, I was introduced to computers via the Technical and Vocational Education Initiative program. I would go as far as to say that I work in information as an information technology consultant because of this program.
Nice.
Also, don't forget the BBC microcomputer would not exist without a forward-looking attitude. The outlook back then was to skill up the nation about understanding and creation of technology rather than mindless consumption. The focus now is not on understanding technology, but abstracting it and push it away to make it someone else's problem for a monthly fee.
Well, I did a visit last weekend to my son's prospective school for senior school, and I went into the ICT suite, and I was very pleasantly surprised to talk to one of the students there who was telling me about all the coding challenges they do, that they're currently using Python to develop applications to do certain things, and loads of the PCs were spun up with things like code.org and other websites where they teach coding challenges. There's one, Code Battle or something like that, where you basically program a virtual robot to challenge something else. I think it's called Code Battle or something like that. But I was very pleasantly surprised to see that it wasn't just a room full of spreadsheets and word processors and stuff, but actually, like, I looked on the shelf and the student I was talking to pointed to the Python reference manual as one of the books that she's using for her studies. So actually, I think it's getting better.
Brilliant. And 24Flitchin also posted on our Reddit.
Breathe in. I'm just going to throw out my 2 cents. Being someone that went to school and focused on the Windows environment, the biggest reason I found to never try Linux was the community I saw around Linux at the local level. It was full of people that were really just looking to feel superior. They hated me for using Windows. They hated each other because of their choice of distros. The amount of misinformation that was exchanged was another reason. Overall, I ended up befriending a guy who volunteered in the Ubuntu community. He introduced me to Ubuntu, and I slowly started to understand why he enjoyed Linux, and I kind of fell in love with Linux also. He was honest, not afraid to point out the drawbacks in Linux had, and was passionate about fixing and improving them. Wow, that's a nice, concise story. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Is that all of our feedback?
It is.
It is.
Sweet. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening, homies, to episode 34. We'll be back next week when we'll have more news, comment, and discussion. And I look forward to hearing all your feedback of your experience with Ubuntu 17.10, all the flavors. We want to know about everything you've tried, what worked, what didn't work. Maybe we'll have an extended feedback edition if we have plenty of feedback. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Go and get the train, Mark. Quick, quick, quick. That was good. I like that.